Hi everyone. So today we have another Hopewell workshop for you. We're excited to do this. As you all know, probably it's the holiday season starting soon, and so this is.
Sorry, we're dealing with some technology issues a little bit. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, it's the holiday season, and the reason why we're doing this is because we know that it is a really difficult time for a lot of people going through recovery from an eating disorder. And so we decided that this could be helpful for some. So I'm just gonna present ourselves. I'm Camille, and this is...
Yes, and I'm Sarah.
Yeah, and so we're both now volunteer at Hopewell. I've been facilitating support groups for Hopewell for over 4 years, I think.
And yeah, I just started mentoring with Hopewell too. And yeah, I love the organization, and I'm super honored to have had this opportunity to not only be a mentor, but also give this workshop with Camille. And yeah, I'm just going to reiterate a little bit, but yeah, we totally understand how difficult the holiday season can be when you're struggling with, ED and going through recovery. And hopefully, like, this is something else, another resource for you that you can lean on if you need it.
So just before we start the workshop itself, I just need to do like a little disclaimer that some of the content might be triggering, obviously just because we're talking about eating disorders and how to cope with it. Obviously, we are having like safeguards in place, like we're avoiding the most triggering topics, that kind of stuff, but there is the potential for it. We also will be giving a resource list in the chat towards like the end of the event. So if ever you are feeling uncomfortable or triggered, you can definitely reach out to those, I guess, resources. And then regarding like self-disclosure, obviously we know that eating disorders are very different to everyone. It's not a one-size-fits-all, obviously. And so we want to acknowledge that like our experiences and what we're going to talk about tonight comes, yes, from knowledge, from like helping other people, but also from our own, and that we come from privileges. And so we want to acknowledge that before we start.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, things aren't going to work for everyone. So, and if you hear something that is not going to work for you, then that's totally fine too. Just take what serves you and leave what doesn't. So yeah, so the way the workshop is going to go is until 8 o'clock. We're just gonna talk about coping tips during the holidays, during eating disorder recovery. And talk about what loved ones can do if they know someone who's struggling with an eating disorder or in recovery. And then the last 15 minutes, we're going to open up for a Q&A. So yeah, and feel free along the way to type questions in the chat, and we'll try to monitor it as best as we can. If we can, we will just answer it on the spot, and if not, then we will definitely answer it by the end.
One thing, disclaimer again, that we need you to know is that because on Zoom it is recorded, that if you do choose to speak up because you have a question, that will be recorded as well. And obviously on Facebook, if you do choose to make a comment, this will be public.
Okay, well, let's begin. Camille, want to start us off?
Sure. So let's start with the very basics.
The easy stuff.
Yeah. With self-care. So like, why is it important? And we'll give you like some examples. So what I want to talk about here is really because we have, or at least society, I feel, has this specific idea of what self-care is, which is like bubble bath and, I don't know, doing your nails,
facials,
yeah,
petting your pet,
which it can be ultimately, but we're talking about different type of self-care, and self-care that might be more needed than just doing bubble bath. And that is the emotional versus the physical self-care. And that goes into making sure that your mental and physical health are taken care of. And that goes such as like taking your medication, making sure you're drinking enough water, making sure that you're sleeping enough. And obviously, we're going to be talking about how to make sure that you are eating enough throughout the holidays. We are very aware that's one of the difficult part, but we'll give you some tips on that further down the line.
And another big part of what we're going to be talking about are coping skills. So as many of you might know, eating disorders are a coping mechanism. So what you want to try to do in recovery is figure out more productive skills so that it's not a self-destructive behavior that you end up engaging in. And a lot of these coping skills like help you learn to sit with those really tough emotions. And obviously stuff like crowds, foods that you don't normally eat, being out of your routine, all these regular things that happen during the holidays can be very overwhelming, and they can, lead to a lot of, difficult emotions as well. So there is going to be, times where you will have to either sit with those negative emotions or you do some type of distraction, but eventually you will have to, face those emotions. So we do want to
therapy.
Yes. Yeah. So we do want to give you some skills to like help you just manage them in the meantime, and hopefully make them less distressful than they would be without using healthier coping skills.
And I think the important thing here to talk about is the difference between self-care and coping skills. So self-care is more of a prevention plan. It's more like before and after, before and after you have that big holiday meal with your family and that it's going to be a tough time. While coping skills is really in the midst of it, when you're feeling so many emotions and you have a hard time maybe managing them, and maybe you're struggling a little bit, those are when you can go towards your coping skills. But we want to make sure that you also have that plan beforehand so that you know where you're going with that day that might be more difficult for you.
Yeah, for sure. And another time when these really difficult emotion might arise might be when you're picking out an outfit or you're going to meet a bunch of people, and usually that's when body image issues arise, or your body image difficulties arise. And obviously it's really hard, especially when you're in ED recovery, to just, you can't go from hating your body to absolutely loving it. So a good step in between that just might alleviate some of these distressful feelings is practicing body neutrality. So you don't even have to it could include mantras telling yourself I look okay today, instead of a negative emotion. It's just really trying to avoid the negativity. So it's to get rid of those, well, you can't always get rid of it, but it's it's to catch, it's to raise awareness of those negative emotions arising and figuring out either, the opposite thought, and then trying to find something in the middle. And that middle space might be the safest place for you for a little bit, because sometimes it can also be overwhelming to go from, extreme negativity to extreme positivity. So finding that healthy balance in the middle through body neutrality can be super helpful.
And the other thing too is to not only look at your thought, but maybe just be, if you can, again, we're not talking necessarily like when you're at the height of your emotion, but when it's a little bit more calm and you've taken maybe some space to like take a look at your emotions, to like see if there's like your pattern, like what exactly are your triggers or your fear foods, or I'm sure you already, all of you have an idea, but so that you can maybe catch it quicker when it comes on. And to have, again, like I said earlier, like a plan on like, okay, what am I going to do if that emotion does come up?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, the other thing with body image is, you know, body dysmorphia that a lot of people with eating disorders do struggle with. So like, this is just your reminder too, that if you do know that you struggle with this, just reminding yourself that, you know, what you're seeing, what you perceive in the mirror is not reality, can be really helpful. The more you tell yourself things like that, the more it'll become easier to believe. And the same thing for I mean, like awareness wise, is also being aware of body checking too. I know myself, when I was in eating disorder recovery, I'd always body check, like it never stopped. But just what the biggest, like my first step into stopping that was just recognizing when I was doing it. You know, for a lot of people with eating disorders, body checking becomes an almost unconscious mechanism. You know, like it could be something that you do when you're nervous. It could be something you do when you're sad. You know, it's just something that happens unconsciously when you're having some type of negative emotion. So trying to recognize when that's happening can be super helpful, because once you recognize it, then you be able to stop it or figure out the triggers that are probably causing it too.
I just want to say if it's possible for Hopewell to maybe like pin our video so that we will be the main one being recorded and not the participants.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing too that
it's done. We're good.
Perfect. And the other thing too was like, as you mentioned, like those kind of behaviors, sometimes it's coming back to, yes, neutrality, and then also acceptance, and like acceptance that that's how you feel today. Maybe you don't feel great, and maybe you don't, you know that like it's going to be hard, and sometimes it's just accepting that that's going to be hard and then figuring out how you can get through it. So some type of distress tolerance to a level. Yeah. And you know, with that acceptance, you know, there could be some mindfulness involved as well too. So whether that's, you know, like trying to accept your feelings at the time with some deep breathing, or even, you know, going for a gentle walk or something like that, or grounding exercises. Yeah, exactly. And mindfulness could just be a way to facilitate accepting those emotions. And because what happens sometimes is we have not only our primary emotions, but we also have secondary emotions. So the primary emotions are the ones that you're feeling at the time. So like, say you're anxious about going to a Christmas party. Well, your secondary emotion might be some guilt, or it might be some shame about being anxious about going to this Christmas party. So you do really want to find a way to stop that secondary emotion from also being a negative emotion. And that's where mindfulness can come in. You know, that's where, you know, taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and accepting rather than shaming yourself for feeling anxious is very important. And then when it comes to like your fear foods that might be present during the meal or during whatever event that you're going to, it could be helpful. Again, this is not necessarily for everybody, but it could be helpful to maybe reach out to the host if you're not the one hosting it, and like identify in advance what kind of food is going to be there. And depending on where you are in recovery, you can either like bring your own food if you think like those food that are going to be there are going to be too like
anxiety provoking.
Yes, exactly. And or if you're up for the challenge and you know that you have the abilities to manage your anxieties and your emotions, you could challenge yourself to try them there. Now, I do want to caution you that like if you're going to, let's say, like a family meeting and the people there are not supportive, that might not be the best place to do that. I would really recommend to doing it in a safe space, or at least having a supportive person there to like help you through that. And obviously one very, very, very important thing that I want to talk about is following your meal plan or recovery plan, or however you want to call it. Just making sure that you're eating enough if your tendency is to restrict. Just making sure that even if you have a big meal at night, that you are still eating during the day and that you're not letting your ED voice take over. And so this goes into maybe like practical hunger. So maybe you're not hungry right now, but you know that you should be eating because you're gonna have to wait. Let's say you're traveling, right, to see your family, and it's gonna take a few hours. And you know that if you wait that long, you're going to be very hungry. So you better just take a snack now instead of waiting that long. So it's just taking to your recovery plan and making the best informed decision in advance.
And eating throughout the day is extremely important, especially if, your eating disorder is, characterized by binging behaviors as well. It's just common human instinct a lot of the time to feel hungry if we haven't eaten all day. So, like if, you're going to a Christmas party and you're telling yourself, oh, well, I'm worried I'm going to binge. I'm not going to eat during the day. Well, the likelihood of you binging is that much higher when you do that. So making sure that you do eat, like consistently throughout the day will not only help your brain work properly to help you regulate your emotions better, but it'll also, help you when it comes to dealing with those urges to binge too.
So like I would like to specify that like we went through two different eating disorders. I had more of anorexia and
I had bulimia.
So this is why like we'll bring like different perspective to this. And I think this is important because not everybody eating disorder is similar, as we said earlier. Another thing too is that you could potentially do is eat before the meal. If, for example, eating around other people just makes you so much more anxious and you don't think you'll be able to manage that, is to maybe eat before going there. That way you can really focus on like the experience rather than just the food being there.
And that kind of leads into like the second point that we're talking about is find a purpose or find distractions. It doesn't all have to be about food during the holidays, right? And if you are struggling a lot and your like head's wrapped up in your ED thoughts regarding food, then finding other things to do could be super helpful, whether that's like going to the Christmas market or going to a comedy show or going to a trivia night, things to like help you, I guess, kind of like fight like the ED experience of like your life revolving around food. It doesn't have to be that way. And, the holidays don't have to be that way either.
No. And especially if like you have, I don't want to say dysfunctional family, but if you have a family that doesn't make you feel safe and that doesn't make you feel like they accept you as you are, this can be especially challenging. And I mean, a big part of eating disorders is like like you said earlier, coping mechanism. And so that might just make it worse. So having those little moments of like distraction throughout the holidays is probably going to help a lot. And again, it comes back to, at the same time, self-care.
Yeah. And, like, as always, as when you're going through a difficult situation, try to, either schedule a therapy appointment either before and after, or just after, or go to a support group. Hopewell is obviously a great one to join. Just try to find some type of support, whether professional or informal, just so that you can, I guess, work through your emotions with others, with some type of support.
And that can include like friends or supportive family members, if that is an option for you, because we do know and realize that therapy is not necessarily accessible to everyone. Although there are resources out there that have like a sliding scale, and I always invite you to ask for that. We realize it's not accessible to everyone.
100%. And if you aren't comfortable with talking to people in person, there's always online options too. We do have a resource in our list there where it's just like texting service. So, when it's basically like a crisis line, but for texting for people with eating disorders. So there's definitely like a bunch of other options out there as well, if you are uncomfortable discussing your struggles in person still too.
And then like kind of coming back to like the event itself, other things to take into consideration with this are, so I would recommend always having a form of branding with you. So either that can be like a picture on your phone, like music, podcast. It can be, again, a mantra, like you said, that like you can write down, or like maybe like a perfume that you really like and that like makes you feel calmer. And another thing too is your body image. Going back to that, make sure to wear comfortable clothes. You don't want to wear clothes that are going to be more triggering.
Yeah, and you can always bring comfy clothes too. Like, I'm sure at least at any party I've hosted, like, I'm in PJs by 9 o'clock. Like, everyone knows that. But yeah, so self-affirmations. I know that we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but this has to do with, whenever you have like a negative voice come up, try to like counter that with a positive statement. Camille, I know you do a lot of work with this technique. Did you want to talk about it a bit?
So it's actually in one of the resources I've put a self-love challenge that I did a few years ago, and it's to help you build self-love. But as we said, like, sometimes when you go from self-hatred, it's kind of hard to get to that point of self-love, but at least you're on that journey. And I think that's the most important part here that we want to like highlight tonight, is that like it's a journey, and we don't expect you to be fine by the end of the holidays. We just want you to be able to get through it with as many tools as you can. And so, I love self-affirmations. There is a whole psychology behind it. I'm not going to go into that, but I do recommend trying it out. It might feel extremely awkward at first, but if you stick to it for a few days, it might help. And again, it could be as easy as like meditation. There is a ton of that on YouTube as well, so that's always an option.
Yeah, for sure. Now there's also like the idea of being flexible yet still like following your like recovery plan and your recovery routine. And there's like a very fine line between, like what you can do to be flexible and like what you can do that will just like not help you fall off the wagon, but it's just not going to lead to anything productive. And honestly, it's going to depend on, it might depend on your day-to-day feelings. Some days you're going to feel really good and you're going to be like, you know what, like I feel good to eat consistently throughout the day. Like I'm okay with eating whatever food the host is having at a Christmas party, blah, blah, blah. And other days it's going to be like, it's going to be a lot more difficult, and some of the warning signs that, just physical warning signs could be, you may have not slept well the night before, or you may have had a super long week, or a stressful event happened, so if you know that some of those, stressors are kind of happening, then you can already kind of expect for it to be a tougher day. And if that's the case, then we obviously would recommend that you do, follow whatever type of recovery plan you have, whether that's, like a meal plan or routine, just to help you stay on track. And, we've talked about, talking to the host at different parties, like, or we keep talking about Christmas parties for some reason, but I just feel like there's a lot of Christmas gatherings.
Or it could be any really other gatherings from any like religion or culture. It's just what we come from.
Yes, of course. So yeah, just social gatherings in general. Whether it's talking to them and being like, look, like any chance we could make this party a potluck, or, just ways that you can make it more comfortable for you. And whether that looks like eating before, like Camille says, or whether that looks like, bring your own food, or whether that looks like participating fully, and either way, like a lot of the time we are more self-conscious about ourselves, and we perceive people like having attention on us when they don't.
But I get what you mean.
You get what I mean? What I'm trying to get at is,
Exactly.
a lot of the time we can be self-conscious, and we think that everyone is paying attention to what we are doing.
Yeah.
But the reality is they're not, like
We're
it's
just in our own head.
Exactly. And so reminding yourself of that too, as much as it can be hard in the moment. But just take a step back and look around, and chances are there's not going to be anyone staring at you. And if they are, they're going to be staring with a smile,
Hopefully.
We
are going to talk about how there is unsupportive members, and how to respond to that later on. So we are aware that not every family is picture perfect,
or just friends in general.
Yeah, that too.
Support systems,
but yes, hopefully people are more focused on the experience and the joy of it than on criticizing each other.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wanted to like restate that, like, especially for like this, for like anorexia or any like restricting type of behaviors, I know like routine is very and structure is very important around recovery around that, and there needs to be some flexibility to it. But at the same time, if it's something that brings you comfort, and now I'm not talking about enabling your ED behavior, I'm talking about comfort. It's very different. And maybe you're not at that stage yet where you know the difference. But again, mindfulness. But it's important to still prioritize that throughout the holidays. And so that might mean like compromising on some things. So instead of maybe going to all of the like gatherings, maybe just choosing the ones that really matter to you.
Yeah. And another example of that when it comes to like enabling versus like comforting yourself, like enabling would be, like any like avoiding food if like restriction behavior is, part of your eating disorder. Whereas, comfort would be just eating a food that you're comfortable eating, so if, you're having a bad day, like, don't restrict, try not to restrict, but do your best to just do something, like eat what you are comfortable eating. And a lot of that time it will look like the meal plan that you have, set up for yourself as part of your recovery journey. And if that's what you need to eat that day, then that's what you need to eat. But obviously avoid things that, are in your eating disorder comfort zone.
And that comes a lot with, I think, like opposite actions and mechanical eating. Those two were very important concepts in my own recovery and in many people's recovery. So maybe just keeping that in mind on the days that it is harder, opposite actions and mechanical eating.
So do we want to talk about that? Or
Sure.
So another thing too, and we have, discussed, being with other people and so on. But a lot of the time with, eating disorders, they are often comorbid with some type of anxiety or social anxiety, and it might feel more comfortable to socially isolate. But a lot of the time when you socially isolate, it's also a lot easier to, go into a downward spiral in your negative thoughts or even negative behaviors too, because no one is there to hold you accountable. So obviously, everyone needs breaks from people at some points, and we will talk about like taking breaks at, social gatherings and so on. But what we do want to stress is, try to at least be connected to a community or someone. And like, even if you don't have like a supportive community with you or supportive person or like a safe person, there are, options too, where you can indirectly interact with people, just being in a public place, like reading a book at a bookstore instead of at home alone, or, going for a walk in the woods. Obviously don't do it late at night alone, but like, you get what I mean. But yeah, so we do really want to reinforce the importance of being connected.
Yeah, it's very important, because a lot of the times the ED will thrive in secrecy, and obviously the more secrecy there is around it, bigger it might get. So it's important to have at least that one connection, no matter what it looks like. You could be, for example, like part of Facebook groups. Now, I do want to stress that online, it's a double-edged sword. That's how you say it? Yeah. Because again, this can be sometimes triggering, and you gotta be careful on where you go. But when you find the right place, it can be a great source of support.
Yeah, for sure. And we also recognize too that there are, cultural differences, and depending on where you come from, your culture may or may not recognize eating disorders, or, a culture might be may have completely internalized values towards thinness or values towards a specific body type. So in those cases, like I really suggest, taking a step back, and that's where, supportive online communities are extremely helpful, right? Like, yes, one type of, culture or group of people might have a certain set of beliefs and values around, particular body types and so on. But, there's also a whole world out there, and that there are many, many countries and different cultures and people who recognize eating disorders, and not only that, but recognize how do I put it, exploitative or hurtful some values towards a particular body type could be.
And I think that also applies to food, because depending on culture, they put more or less emphasis on food and around mealtime and what that means. So I think even taking that into consideration is something else too. And again, like going back to having maybe that support, even if it's not like within your family or within like your small circle, but having someone or something to reach out to.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're gonna talk a little while about unsupportive family members, or like, I guess, people who are just, enthralled in diet culture, rhetorics, and so on. So Camille, if I were to say something that would be inappropriate towards anyone, which I honestly, I deem any comment about weight on anyone is inappropriate. So if I were an unsupportive family member and I told you that, Camille, what are some of the things you might respond with?
Okay, so there is 3 options here. There is the option of communicating your limits or / calling them out with humor, because it helps. Either changing topic, redirecting the conversation, or act as if you didn't hear what they just said. Or you can simply just leave the conversation. Now, what I want to stress about is that how you respond will depend on the context. So example, did they make the comment in front of you only, or was there other people around? Was it at your place? Was it at their place? Was it in a public setting? And what is your relationship with that person? Is it safe to speak up? Or have you already tried and they don't understand? Or maybe that you just don't care enough about the relationship to want to continue seeing them again. Maybe it's just like a one-time thing that you won't see them again. So it's better for yourself to put your energy into just managing your emotions than having to, because it takes energy, it takes courage to have to speak up, and
100%, especially when you're already struggling and when you're already overwhelmed, and then when someone is going to turn around and say a hurtful comment or a comment that makes you feel uncomfortable, it makes it that much worse. So yeah, don't waste your energy.
If it's not worth it. If you think that the person might be open to feedback, and again, I want to stress that a lot of people don't understand eating disorders. It might take them a few reminders before they remember, but it doesn't mean that they're not trying. And one thing that I do sometimes with people, I just refer them to resources. So for example, I'm uncomfortable with the comment you just made. I would like it if you avoided that kind of topic from now on. And if you want to know more about this, I can just send you a link to a resource and you can just read on it.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing too is there are going to be people who honestly, we're all human at the end of the day, and we all don't know everything about everything. And it's going to happen where someone who is in, your safe circle, or who you consider an ally in your eating disorder recovery, might say something that you find out of line. And in those cases, that's a perfect time to share either resources with them or be open about how that made you feel and why they can't say those things. And people like that will they will apologize profusely, and chances are they are your safe person, they will never do it again. Right, so just because someone says something that's hurtful or unhelpful, it doesn't mean that they're trying to. A lot of the time, people with eating disorders don't understand the power of their words, especially around comments about weight or food or exercise, anything along those lines. And they just need more education about it. So try not to take it as them trying to attack you or trigger you, because more often than not, they're not trying to.
A lot of the time it's a reflection of their own insecurities. And like I said earlier, you could call them out with humor, or even like be gentle about it. Like, hey, like, you know, that kind of comment is kind of negative. Like, are you sure you want to continue talking to yourself like that? And sometimes a lot of the time, people don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Because it's just so ingrained into society and like mainstream media. The other thing too is how much you share. So let's say you tell somebody that, hey, this is my limit, I don't appreciate it. How much you share about how that made you feel and about what you would like them to do instead is up to you. They don't necessarily need to know that you are struggling with an eating disorder. You know, it depends on how close they are to you in your circle. Not everybody is entitled to your personal information.
Yeah, for sure. And like Camille and I, we were talking about this last night, and like I honestly think that like anyone would be, you know, somewhat uncomfortable by a comment regarding weight. So you could even say that, you know, like when someone makes a comment about your weight, you know, just turn around and be like, would you like it if I commented on your weight too? You know, like, and chances are they're going to say no because it's uncomfortable, you know? So yeah, that's another way to redirect it. But obviously too, you could just leave the conversation. Now, Camille, what are some tips when using a safe person?
Okay, so there's like 2 points to this, I guess. Again, it depends on the context. If you're in front of other people, it might not be the best time to have that conversation with them, right? So one thing that you can say is just like, either like you don't say anything and you just wait for the right moment, you take them aside privately, and then you have that conversation with them. Or you can simply just leave it at like, I don't appreciate that kind of comment. I would appreciate if you didn't say that again, and leave it at that. And then, yeah.
I think I asked the question wrong. What I meant by the safe person is I meant, you know, you actually have a safe person or someone that you know that you can confide in, or someone that can help you leave conversations with people who aren't, who are saying unhelpful things or who are unsupportive. So like, you know, having, you know, one friend to confide in at a party, or like having, you know, someone that you can call and who understands your struggles. So, you know, like that could look like having a code word with them, you know, when you're at a social gathering, or what was that thing you were saying last night, like when you get people to call you?
So okay, so you know how sometimes when you go on dates, you tell your friends, call me if it's like really bad, so I have a reason to leave. You could technically do the same thing in this situations too.
Yeah, when you're uncomfortable, like you know, you could just send a code word over text and your friend knows to call you, you know. And like that could be any friend. You don't even have to tell them that like you're struggling with an eating disorder. You could just be like, look, I'm going to the social gathering and like I'm not sure if I'm going to be comfortable or not. If I text you this word, can you call me? You know, like you really don't have to divulge too much.
And the other thing too is you could not necessarily like make it a point to tell them, but just maybe just like plan in advance, like at this time, can you just check in with me? Just check in to see if I'm doing good. I'm maybe like, I want to hear about what you've been up to, and just using that time to take a step back from whatever is happening around you to just recenter yourself.
100%. For sure. And a lot of us, it doesn't matter who you are, we're going to be hearing a lot about New Year's resolutions, and a lot of the time they are centered around diet talk and weight loss.
Exactly.
Yes. And yeah, so diet culture, and it's extremely pervasive in a lot of societies. Like the diet industry alone is $1 billion industry. And, you know, part of how they make so much money is exploiting people and making money off of people's insecurities. Now I'm not going to go too much into this, even though I'm super passionate about it. But yeah, so like when people do start talking about those types of things, like whether it's like their New Year's resolution to lose weight or their New Year's resolution to do more of this type of exercise, blah, 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 like, you know, you can like either leave the conversation, or if you feel comfortable about it, ask them, you know, like, why are you doing this? You know, like, are you doing it for you? Like, are you doing it to like actually feel better? Or are you doing it because you want to look a certain way? And if you are, then like, that's not always coming from you, that's coming from societal expectations.
Just be ready for whatever answer that they're going to give you, because a lot of people don't even realize that like they have internalized the external pressure. So just make sure that if you do ask the question, that you are ready for any type of answers, and that that's just not going to trigger you even more.
100%. And like the diet industry like has gotten extremely innovative with using words like wellness or gut health, and like, you know, trying to say that's all about getting healthy, but it's still all ingrained with the underlying goal to lose weight. And like the reality is, if any of these tactics were sustainable and or healthy, then this industry would stop making money. So it's setting up people to fail, and unfortunately, a lot of time people aren't ever gonna realize that.
Yeah. And again, coming back to that, it's like, how are you going to deal with that if those types of comments are made? And so some ideas, if for distraction, could be like, you're gonna leave the room, you're gonna go to the bathroom, if they have pets, you can play with the pets. Maybe bring a book with you. You could take a walk. Again, opposite action. If this is one of your like disordered behavior, may not be the best idea. And just, if really you feel like people are not respecting your boundaries and you are not comfortable staying, it is okay to leave.
Yeah, 100%.
Your mental health comes first.
Yeah. And, you know, like that kind of goes back to having self-compassion for yourself, you know, like whether that's, you know, accepting any type of, you know, thoughts or distressing feelings that might come up, or it's just telling yourself that like, you know, like maybe you had a bit of a setback, you know, like maybe you engaged in a ED behavior, or, you know, followed your ED thoughts a little bit too much, you know, like just being compassionate with yourself and understanding that like, you know, okay, it was, yes, I messed up this time, but like, you know, I'm going to get right back on the horse. You know, every like setbacks do not have to lead into a relapse. And unfortunately, when we aren't compassionate with ourselves, when we aren't, you know, just loving ourselves through these difficult times, that's when we are at our greatest risk of relapse, because, you know, it's when we shame ourselves, it's when we talk to ourselves negatively that we do engage in coping mechanisms rather than coping skills.
Yeah. And again, like when it comes to relapse and to recovery, each one of them are choices in some way. And so staying in recovery is a daily choice that you have to make, or even hourly choice that you have to make sometimes. And like Sarah says, setbacks will probably happen, but it's again having that compassion for yourself and making that decisions not to keep going down that way, and instead reaching out. Honestly, reaching out is like the biggest thing.
Yeah, recognizing that you're not alone, and like because you aren't. there's so many people who like may not have eating disorders, but have experience with disordered eating, because unfortunately our society like is pervasively addressing and putting attention on bodies, you know. So there's a lot of people that you can reach out to.
Going back to that actually, and to the online, there are certain things that like can be helpful, and some of that might be diversifying your feed a little bit more and not just following things that feeds your eating.
Yeah,
if you are into social media and that kind of stuff.
For sure. Well, we're running short on time, so we will just do a quick overview of tips for anyone who knows someone who's struggling for an eating disorder, with an eating disorder, not for an eating disorder. Anyways, with an eating disorder. So yeah, some of the stuff might sound a little bit redundant because we did talk about a lot of the things that might be triggering or overwhelming or difficult for individuals in ED recovery. But here we're just going to like, you know, specifically focus on things to avoid or either things to do.
Yeah. So obviously, at least for me, it's obvious. And I think for you, it's obvious. If you can avoid any diet talks, making comments about someone's weight, what they eat, again, like don't comment on someone's plate, how much they're eating, what they're eating, what's your perception of that? Because sadly, society has a lot of ideas about like what is right and what is wrong to eat. And then like morality and guilt around that. So drop all of it. Just focus on the experience of really, hopefully, if you're with people that you're enjoying. And then if you are somebody's safe person and you see someone else make comments like that, try to change the subject for them. That way they don't have that pressure to do that themselves.
Yeah. And thanks, Claire. Anyways, we talked about the shift focus away from food yet, or
no? So
okay,
well, yes, a little bit.
So yeah, so like that's another thing too. If you are someone's safe person, not only, you know, like stopping people from making, you know, comments regarding diet talk, but also just shifting the focus away from food could be helpful too. So like if you are, say, hosting a party and someone's coming and, you know, they're struggling with an eating disorder or in eating disorder recovery, making sure that you have other things planned that aren't involving food or drinks can be super, super helpful. So like whether that's card games or listening to music, watching a movie, maybe everyone can bring their pets.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Except cats. You can't bring house cats to other places.
But yeah, the idea is basically to just not have all the focus be on food. And I think this comes back to also giving that person the space and choices. Like, for example, instead of having just like one option for the meal, maybe have 2 or 3, and maybe it might ask a little bit more effort, but it will make a big difference for that person. Or like Sarah mentioned earlier, it could be like a potluck or something like that, where it's more of like a buffet where people bring what they're comfortable with and there's choices. And regarding that too, it's like the less surprises, the better. If they know how many people are going to be there, etc., that might take away some of their anxiety. Regarding food wise, like maybe instead of having everyone sit at one table, and because a lot of it in ED is about like comparison, maybe have like different tables, so the focus is less on like the food and how much everyone is eating, but it's more about really like discussions and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. And like honestly like one of the best things that you could do too. And like obviously you don't want to leave the food out too long till it goes bad, but like, you know, just having a bunch of food out and like people can just go and eat whenever they feel like eating. You know, like I guess it's like potluck style, similar to that. But
yeah,
and
time-wise.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like that way, if the person is, you know, struggling with an eating disorder or in recovery, they can, you know, like plan to follow their routine in a way that also fits what everyone else is doing at the party, you know. The last thing that someone with in eating disorder recovery wants to feel like is like a burden, you know. So they don't want to ruin your evening, and they don't want to make it so that you have to be like extra careful. And like, you know, a lot of what we're telling you now, it's a lot of information, and it might feel like, as someone who might not know what having an eating disorder is like, you might feel like you're walking on eggshells, like that you're gonna make mistakes. And like the reality is, yeah, you're gonna make mistakes. Like you haven't had an eating disorder before, you're not gonna know the perfect way to act or the perfect way to speak with someone who's in eating disorder recovery. But in the same breath, the people in eating disorder recovery, like Camille and I told them to, is they also understand that, you know, other people are human and they're going to make mistakes. And like, you know, and that's a time for like, I'm assuming that if you are watching because you know someone in eating disorder recovery, they will have that talk with you, and they will, you know, educate you on the things that you could do better and the things that you're already doing well.
And you can educate yourself as well. Like, don't make it their responsibility to tell you how to help them. Definitely can be helpful to you if they tell you exactly what they need, but sometimes they might not know themselves. And I think going back to that is just not putting the focus on food. So like maybe checking in with them after the event, how it was for them, but not, for example, like while they're eating at the table, asking them, are you eating enough?
Yeah,
that's to avoid.
Yeah, that's, and this is more so like for family members, I find. And this is just like, yeah, like at the time, like when you're in the middle of a Christmas dinner or a holiday dinner or some type of gathering dinner, it's not the time to like, you know, start grilling someone in eating disorder recovery about whether or not they're eating enough. Like the reality is they made it to that gathering and they're sitting there and they're eating with you. They're doing a lot.
So encouragement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think so too. We would like to open it up to questions. Kemi's monitoring the live on Facebook, and yeah, I'll be here watching the chat on Zoom. So yeah, does anyone have any questions at all? No?
Well, I think also a reminder to say to like close up this workshop is that if you are interested in like going into or using services like support groups or other workshops, just send an email to Hopewell and then we can help you find the appropriate service for you. I think our biggest reminder tonight is that, again, you're not alone. There is a way for you to find help and to stay in recovery. Sounds good. Any final words that you have?
Yeah, the Q&A portion on Zoom will also not be recorded. So yeah, if there are any questions on the Zoom platform, then we can just stop the live or anything like that.
Well, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Camille, for inviting me. And thank
It
you,
was my pleasure.
Hopewell, for having us. We are so happy to be able to give a talk like this. We are very passionate about this type of work. And yeah.
And if ever you want to reach out to us for more talks or things like that, don't hesitate. We love doing this. And we just hope that we can help some people get through this difficult part.